Maya Daniels watches in disbelief as FBI agents flood into Riverdale Police Station, weapons drawn. Just 30 minutes earlier, she'd been face down on filthy concrete, an officer's knee digging into her back. The badge she'd spent 14 years honoring meant nothing to them. Now everything changes. If you're watching this incredible story about justice and accountability, let me know where you're viewing from in the comments below. Before we dive into how a decorated military veteran became the catalyst for exposing an entire corrupt police department, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to catch more powerful stories of triumph over discrimination. Are you ready to witness how one woman's humiliation transformed into the downfall of a system built on racism? Let's get into it. Maya Daniels carefully selected a ripe avocado, placing it into her reusable grocery bag as she navigated the pristine aisles of Riverside Grocery in Maplewood, the suburban neighborhood where she'd purchased her first home just 3 months earlier. At 38 years old, with 14 years of distinguished service as an Army intelligence officer, including 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, Maya had finally achieved what many considered the American dream, a beautiful home in a safe neighborhood with good schools, though she didn't have children yet. Her appearance today was casual but neat. Her natural hair pulled back in a simple bun, minimal makeup, accentuating her high cheekbones and intelligent eyes, comfortable jeans, and a plain blue t-shirt completing her weekend shopping. Outfit. She couldn't help but notice the store manager Richard Whitfield, a balding white man in his 50s with perpetually pursed lips, shadowing her movements between aisles, his reflection visible in the security mirrors mounted in corners. This wasn't the first time she'd noticed this treatment, but Maya continued selecting items on her list, maintaining her dignity despite the unwelcome surveillance. When an elderly white woman dropped a can of soup, Whitfield materialized instantly with a smile, helping her while calling her Mrs. Jenkins and asking about her grandchildren. When Maya reached for a bottle of olive oil on a high shelf, Whitfield appeared not to assist, but to watch her hands, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. At checkout, the cashier, a teenage girl with braces who had cheerfully chatted with previous customers, suddenly became formal and distant, examining Maya's credit card with unusual scrutiny despite her excellent credit score and the modest $78 purchase. Maya thanked the girl anyway, maintaining the impeccable manners her mother had drilled into her since childhood. You have to be twice as polite, twice as perfect. Her mother would say, a rule book for navigating a world that judged her differently. Outside in the parking lot, Officer Brett Hawkins and his rookie partner, Officer Tanner Rhodes, sat in their patrol car, the veteran cop pointing out Maya as she loaded grocery bags into her sensible blue Hyundai. "See that one new around here? Doesn't look right for this neighborhood," Hawkins remarked, adjusting his mirrored sunglasses. At 45, Hawkins had 15 years on the force, and a personnel file mysteriously scrubbed of multiple excessive force complaints against minority citizens. Rhodes, 24, and just 8 weeks out of the academy, nodded, uncertainly, having quickly learned that questioning Hawkins' judgments led to uncomfortable shifts and undesirable assignments. Maya drove carefully out of the parking lot, immediately noticing the patrol car pulling out behind her, following closer than necessary, without activating their lights or siren. Years of defensive driving training kicked in, as she maintained exactly the speed limit, used her turn signal for the required 3 seconds before each turn, and kept both hands visible on the wheel. The patrol car continued, tailing her through 3 perfectly legal turns, until finally the lights flashed on. Maya's heart rate accelerated despite having done nothing wrong, her father's warnings echoing in her mind. Keep your hands visible, speak respectfully, no matter what they say, don't make sudden movements. She pulled over in front of a small park, where several neighbors were walking dogs, relieved to have witnesses nearby. Maya placed her hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, took a deep breath, and waited as Officer Hawkins approached with his hand already resting on his holstered weapon, an unnecessarily aggressive posture for a routine traffic. "Stop. License and registration," he barked without preamble. No explanation for the stop, no customary greeting. Of course, Officer Maya responded in the carefully modulated tone she'd perfected through years of military briefings. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" She reached slowly for her documents in the glove compartment after receiving a curt nod of permission. Hawkins' face hardened at the simple question. "You fit the description of someone involved in a shoplifting incident," he said, though no such report had been called in. Maya handed over her license and registration, along with her military ID, hoping the latter might change the officer's demeanor. "I live just 3 blocks from here, Officer Hawkins," she said, reading his nameplate. "I'm a homeowner and a veteran. I was just grocery shopping." Hawkins snorted, examining her military ID with exaggerated skepticism. "Military, huh? Guess they really will take anyone these days. Affirmative action's a hell of a thing." The insult landed precisely as intended, but Maya maintained her composure, aware that Officer Rhodes had approached the passenger side, looking uncomfortable but remaining silent, as his partner escalated a stop with no legitimate basis. "Sir, I've done nothing wrong. If you're not issuing a citation, I'd like to continue home with my groceries," Maya stated calmly, knowing her rights, but also recognizing the danger of asserting them too forcefully in this situation. "Step out of the vehicle," Hawkins demanded, his hand moving to unlock her door without permission. "I'd like to speak to your supervisor," Maya responded, her military training preventing her from showing the fear building inside her. "Please call your supervisor to the scene." Instead of acknowledging her reasonable request, Hawkins yanked her door open with unnecessary force, grabbed Maya's arm, and roughly pulled her from the driver's seat. "You don't make demands here," he growled, slamming her against the side of her own car with enough force to knock the wind from her lungs. Maya didn't resist, but verbally objected. "This is unnecessary and unlawful, Officer Hawkins." Nearby neighbors had stopped walking their dogs, several pulling out phones to record the escalating situation. Maya could see Mrs. Patterson from 2 doors down among them, her expression shocked as she witnessed her new neighbor's treatment. Hawkins wrenched Maya's arms behind her back, the handcuffs clicking closed too tightly around her wrists, immediately cutting into her skin. Resisting arrest, he announced loudly for the gathering audience, though Maya had been completely compliant. "Disorderly conduct." Rhodes stood by, his rookie discomfort evident, but his intervention non-existent as Hawkins pushed Maya toward the patrol car with unnecessary roughness, leaning close to mutter, "Time to teach you about your place in this neighborhood." As Maya was forced into the back seat, her wrists bleeding slightly from the overly tight handcuffs, she caught Rhodes glancing nervously at the neighbors recording the incident. Perhaps the first indication that this encounter might not disappear like so many others before it. The squad car pulled into Riverdale Police Station, a weathered brick building with an American flag hanging limply in the humid afternoon air, its grandeur diminished by peeling paint and outdated security cameras. Inside, harsh fluorescent lights illuminated dingy beige walls decorated with Blue Lives Matter posters and outdated crime prevention flyers, the air heavy with the scent of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Maya was marched through the main entrance, with Hawkins gripping her arm unnecessarily tight, parading her past the front desk, where Sergeant Frank Miller barely looked up from his computer, accustomed to Hawkins bringing in troublemakers from the changing neighborhoods. Officers lounging near the water cooler stopped their conversation to stare, some whispering behind hands, others chuckling at her disheveled appearance, resulting from Hawkins's rough handling. Captain Gerald Monroe emerged from his office, a stocky man in his 50s, with a military-style haircut and perpetually downturned mouth, his gaze calculating as he assessed Maya before beckoning Hawkins over for a private conversation. Despite their lowered voices, Maya's intelligence training had honed her ability to pick up fragments, keeping them out of Maplewood, and send the right message, drifted clearly to her ears, confirming her suspicions about the true nature of her arrest. Officer Jensen, a heavy-set woman with thinning blonde hair, pulled into a severe ponytail, confiscated Maya's personal belongings, placing her phone keys, wallet, and even her hair tie into a plastic property bag with deliberate slowness. "I'd like to make a call to my attorney," Maya stated calmly, knowing this basic right couldn't legally be denied. Jensen exchanged glances with Hawkins, who had returned from his conversation with the captain, both ignoring her request completely, as if she hadn't spoken. "I'm a military intelligence officer," Maya added, hoping this might prompt some professional courtesy or basic respect for her service. Sergeant Vince Cooper, who had been watching the processing with arms crossed over his barrel chest, snorted derisively. "Playing the veteran card won't help you here, honey. Should have thought about that fancy military career before causing trouble." Maya remained silent, recognizing the deliberate provocation, instead focusing on memorizing names, badge numbers, times, and procedural violations for what would surely become a formal complaint, possibly a lawsuit. She was photographed and fingerprinted like a common criminal, despite no formal charges being presented. Her military training in hostile interrogation situations, helping her maintain an outward calm that seemed to irritate Hawkins. Further, "What exactly am I being charged with?" Maya asked, her voice steady, despite the humiliation of being processed in front of the openly hostile room of officers. Hawkins smirked clearly, enjoying his power as he elaborated on his fabricated charges. "Resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, assaulting an officer, and we'll see what else sticks when I finish my report." Maya's wrists throbbed from the unnecessarily tight handcuffs, small abrasions beginning to form beneath the metal, but her request for them to be loosened was met with dismissive laughter from Cooper. She was led to a holding cell with peeling green paint graffiti carved into a wooden bench worn smooth by countless occupants, and a stainless steel toilet without privacy, screening the entire space, reeking of harsh disinfectant, barely masking underlying odors of human distress. Two other women already occupied the cell: Elena Rodriguez, a young Latina woman in a Walmart uniform who had been arrested for loitering while simply waiting for the bus after her late shift, and Shanice Williams, a 72-year-old black woman in birdwatching attire, who had been reported for suspicious behavior in the park by newer white residents unfamiliar with the long-time neighborhood residents' hobby. "Welcome to the Maplewood welcome wagon," Shanice said softly, as Maya took a seat on the bench, careful to avoid the most heavily graffitied sections. "Been living here 30 years, but suddenly I'm suspicious with my binoculars." "You're new around here, aren't you?" Maya nodded, introducing herself quietly, learning through whispered conversation that these women's experiences mirrored her own targeted harassment, designed to make them feel unwelcome in a neighborhood undergoing rapid demographic changes. Meanwhile, in the station's break room, Officer Rhodes replayed the arrest in his mind, increasingly troubled by the discrepancy between Hawkins' report being typed into the system and what had actually transpired. When the senior officers took their coffee break outside for a smoke, Rhodes slipped into the empty monitoring room, pulling up the body cam footage from their shift, his conscience weighing heavily against his desire to fit in with the Britu department. The footage confirmed his fears. Maya had been completely cooperative. The entire stop manufactured from the beginning Hawkins's report fiction designed to justify harassment. Rhodes also noticed something Hawkins might have missed in his eagerness to make an example of Maya. The exterior security camera of Maplewood Credit Union across from the park had a perfect view of the entire interaction, potentially capturing third-party evidence of the misconduct. Lost in thought, Rhodes didn't notice Captain Monroe entering until a heavy hand landed on his shoulder, causing him to flinch guiltily. "Reviewing procedures, rookie, or having second thoughts about how things work around here?" Monroe's voice carried a clear warning, his eyes cold despite his artificial smile. "Just making sure I understand the proper procedure," Sir Rhodes managed, his mouth suddenly dry. "Well, let me explain some unwritten procedures," Monroe continued, his voice dropping to a confidential tone. "This department has maintained peace in Maplewood for decades by being proactive about who belongs. That footage needs to be marked for routine deletion. Understand, system glitch happens all the time." What Monroe didn't know, what the entire department seemed unaware of, was that the new county budget agreement had implemented automatic backup of all body cam footage to county servers, a failsafe against exactly this kind of evidence. Tampering, a system Rhodes had learned about during his academy training but wisely kept to himself now. In the holding cell, Maya requested medical attention for her wrist injuries, blood having dried in thin lines where the handcuffs had cut her skin. "You'll live," Sergeant Cooper dismissed without even examining the wounds, tapping his baton against the cell bars as he walked away. Maya closed her eyes briefly, centering herself through the breathing techniques she'd learned during deployment, creating a mental record of every violation, every name, every time stamp of this increasingly disturbing encounter. Through the small window in the cell door, she noticed an unusual flurry of activity in the station. Men and women in plain clothes, showing credentials at the front desk. Their serious expressions and alert postures instantly recognizable to Baskris, her trained eye as federal agents. The atmosphere in the station shifted perceptibly, officers suddenly straightening paperwork conversations, dying mid-sentence. Captain Monroe emerging from his office with an expression of confused concern as he hurried toward the front desk. All instincts telling Maya that something significant was unfolding. 3 months earlier, FBI Special Agent Tariq Washington stood before a complex web of photos, timelines, and connection diagrams, covering the walls of a nondescript office space located 5 blocks from the federal building, his keen eyes tracing the patterns that had emerged from months of careful investigation. At 42, Washington had become one of the Bureau's most respected investigators. His Howard University education and 10 years of exemplary service earning him leadership of this classified task force investigating police, corruption, and civil rights violations across 3 counties. The pattern is getting clearer, he explained to his team, using a laser pointer to highlight clusters of incidents on the map. Riverdale PD has been systematically targeting minorities in Maplewood and surrounding areas, particularly new homeowners, in previously all-white neighborhoods. Agent Jessica Chen, 34, the team's cyber specialist with dual degrees in computer science and criminology, nodded in agreement as she pulled up data visualizations on her laptop. The communications we've intercepted show coordination between department leadership and certain businesses. They're using code words like community standards and neighborhood character when flagging individuals for harassment. Agent Marcus Patterson, a former civil rights prosecutor recruited specifically for this task force, added his legal perspective. The challenge has always been proving discriminatory intent rather than individual misconduct. What's different here is the pattern and communication chain we're establishing. Washington's task force had been meticulously building their case with unprecedented thoroughness, installing court-approved monitoring on Riverdale PD communications after establishing probable cause through statistical analysis, showing wildly disproportionate enforcement actions against minorities. They had gathered testimonies from previous victims, documented evidence, destruction patterns, and mapped connections between police leadership and local business owners participating in the unofficial neighborhood preservation campaign. Captain Gerald Monroe and Officer Brett Hawkins featured prominently in their investigation, their names appearing repeatedly in connection with false arrests, evidence planting, and coordinating with local businesses to report suspicious minorities. Washington moved to another section of their investigation board, where photos of Riverside Grocery dominated. Richard Whitfield has become a key collaborator, he explained, pointing to surveillance photos showing the grocery manager in conversation with Hawkins in the store parking lot. He receives $100 consultation fees weekly for reporting customers who don't fit the community profile, supposedly for loss prevention. But the targets are invariably minorities with no history of criminal activity. Financial records displayed beside the photos showed suspicious cash deposits to Whitfield's account, correlating perfectly with police action against minority shoppers. It's part of their unofficial neighborhood beautification effort, Chen added, pulling up property value charts for Maplewood. They're effectively discouraging minority homebuyers to maintain artificially inflated property values in these neighborhoods. The real estate connections suggest certain developers benefit directly from this practice, buying properties at reduced prices when minority owners are harassed into selling, then flipping them to white families at premium rates. Patterson whistled softly. Discrimination and profiteering wrapped in a thin veneer of law enforcement. Classic. The moment Maya Daniels' arrest hit their monitoring system, automated keyword algorithms flagged the radio traffic containing military ID alongside suspicious stop codes they'd identified as part of the harassment protocol. Agent Washington received the alert on his secure phone during a briefing with FBI leadership about the broader investigation. "Sir, we may have a live situation," Chen interrupted quickly, accessing real-time body cam footage and nearby security cameras. They watched in professional silence as the entire unlawful arrest unfolded, documenting clear civil rights violations as they occurred. "This is our opportunity," Washington decided, immediately contacting Judge Elaine Michaels, who had been briefed on the investigation and stood ready to review emergency warrants. The judge, daughter of civil rights activists and known for her meticulous attention to constitutional protections, reviewed the footage via secure connection from her chambers. "This is textbook color of law violation," she noted, authorizing immediate intervention before evidence could disappear or the victim face further rights violations. "You have your warrant, Agent Washington. Make it count." Washington moved with practiced efficiency, coordinating with the FBI tactical team, while Agent Chen continued monitoring the station's internal communications and security feeds. Subject is a decorated military intelligence officer unlawfully detained. Washington briefed the assembled agents. Evidence suggests imminent danger of evidence tampering based on previous patterns. Standard dynamic entry secure all evidence storage areas and computer systems simultaneously. Remember, most officers there are not aware of the full extent of corruption, so maintain professional courtesy unless resistance is encountered. What Washington didn't mention in the briefing was the coded text message sent to Internal Affairs Detective Sophia Reynolds, who had been quietly gathering evidence on corrupt Riverdale officers for months. Reynolds, a black woman who had faced discrimination throughout her police career, had been collaborating with the federal investigation while maintaining her cover within the department. She received the message while reviewing reports in a precinct coffee shop, carefully deleting it after memorizing the timetable, preparing herself to witness justice she had fought for. Silently knowing her career within the department would effectively end the moment the FBI made their move, but believing the sacrifice worthwhile. As the tactical team donned their gear and checked weapons, Agent Washington reminded them of their primary objectives: secure the subject, preserve all evidence, particularly electronic records and communications. Based on previous operations, we anticipate attempted destruction of body cam footage and alteration of arrest reports. Time is critical. The convoy of unmarked vehicles moved into position near Riverdale station agents, communicating through encrypted channels, preparing to breach a station that had operated above the law for years. The culmination of months of careful investigation riding on the next 30 minutes. Did you witness something similar in your community? Comment number 1. If you believe police departments should face regular federal oversight to prevent systemic discrimination. Hit that like button if you think military veterans deserve better treatment from the institutions they risk their lives to defend. Subscribe to see more stories of justice finally being served against corrupt systems. Now, what do you think will happen when federal agents storm into a police station filled with officers who believe they're untouchable? Will Maya's military background prove crucial in bringing down this corrupt system? Let's 22. Continue this shocking true story. Maya's military training had taught her to recognize significant changes in operational environments, and the sudden tension crackling through Riverdale Police Station was unmistakable: officers abandoning casual postures for alert, attention-hushed conversations replaced by terse commands as plainclothes individuals moved purposefully through the front entrance. The holding cell door buzzed open unexpectedly, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered black man in his early 40s, wearing a crisp navy suit, his FBI credentials displayed prominently as he stepped into the cell area. "Maya Daniels, I'm Special Agent Tariq Washington, FBI. You're being released immediately," he stated with quiet authority, his eyes quickly assessing her condition, noting the dried blood on her wrists with a slight tightening of his jaw. Confused officers scrambled behind him as federal agents systematically secured the building, some positioned at computer terminals, others in the evidence room. Tactical team members establishing control with professional efficiency that spoke of extensive planning rather than spontaneous intervention. Captain Monroe attempted to retreat to his office when the first agents appeared, his face draining of color as he recognized the scale of the federal presence. but he was intercepted by two agents who politely but firmly directed him to remain in the common area. Maya processed the dramatic shift in power dynamics with the analytical clarity that had made her exceptional in military intelligence, rapidly connecting disparate elements into a coherent picture as Agent Washington briefly explained that she had been unlawfully detained as part of an ongoing civil rights conspiracy under federal investigation. Your military background triggered an automated monitoring system we established to flag potential civil rights violations against protected classes, including veterans. Washington explained as they moved toward the processing area where Agent Chen, a focused Asian American woman with a sleek ponytail and tech-enhanced glasses, was already retrieving Maya's possessions from the property room. "We've been building a case against this department for months, Miss Daniels, and while I regret you experienced this treatment, your situation may provide the final evidence needed for systemic reform." Agent Marcus Patterson, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, and the measured speech patterns of an experienced prosecutor, approached with a medical kit, introducing himself as he gently examined Maya's wrist injuries. "We'll want these documented properly after you receive medical attention," he explained, outlining potential charges against the officers involved while simultaneously explaining Maya's rights as both victim and witness. Despite the chaos surrounding them, Maya maintained the composed demeanor that had carried her through combat zones and high-pressure intelligence operations, asking precise questions that impressed the federal agents with her grasp of legal concepts and evidence protocols. Across the room, the situation deteriorated for Officer Hawkins, who had attempted to access the evidence room when the FBI arrival became apparent, likely intending to destroy bodycam footage and alter arrest reports, as he had successfully done many times before. The SWAT team had anticipated this reaction, two agents intercepting him mid-stride, his resistance earning him a firm but professional takedown that contrasted sharply with how he had treated Maya earlier. Federal agents. "Stand down." Officer Hawkins commanded the lead agent as Hawkins was secured with proper handcuff technique that caused no unnecessary pain or injury despite his continued verbal protests about jurisdiction and procedure. Officer Rhodes approached Agent Washington voluntarily, amid the controlled chaos, his rookie nervousness evident but determination clear in his stance. "Sir, I want to provide testimony about patterns of behavior I've witnessed during my short time with the department," he stated, producing a personal phone containing recordings of inappropriate conversations among senior officers. "I became uncomfortable with department culture during my first week, but wasn't sure how to report it without risking retaliation." Washington nodded appreciatively, assigning an agent to take Rhodes' initial statement while preserving the electronic evidence, recognizing the courage required for a rookie officer to break the notorious blue wall of silence. Captain Monroe, watching his carefully constructed fiefdom crumble around him, made a desperate calculation and approached Agent Patterson with lowered voice. "I have information that could be valuable to your investigation, names that go much higher than this department." His desperate bargaining revealed the true scope of corruption, implicating the mayor's office, business association leaders, and property developers who had worked together for years to maintain neighborhood character through systematic harassment of minority residents. Maya observed this transformation of power, with the clinical detachment her military training had instilled, watching as the arrogant officers who had demeaned and mistreated her just 30 minutes earlier now faced the consequences of WWW. Their actions, their previously confident demeanor, replaced by defensive posturing and blame-shifting. Internal Affairs Detective Sophia Reynolds emerged from the background where she had been observing the operation, her role as cooperating witness now revealed, as she approached Maya with genuine regret in her eyes. "I'm sorry we couldn't intervene sooner," she said quietly. Professional composure, briefly, cracking, to reveal the emotional toll of working within a corrupt system. "We needed evidence solid enough that they couldn't escape justice through technicalities or departmental protection. Too many cases have been dismissed, too many officers walking free after similar violations." Elena Rodriguez and Shanice Williams, The other detainees who had shared Maya's cell were being interviewed by female agents in a separate area, both provided with business cards for civil rights attorneys specializing in police misconduct and unlawful detention. Evidence collection teams worked methodically through the holding cell area, documenting conditions, collecting fingerprints, and processing surface samples to establish patterns of neglect and mistreatment. Agent Washington returned to Maya after overseeing the initial security of digital evidence, his expression grave but satisfied as he explained the broader investigation scope. Miss Time Parks. Daniels, your case will likely become the centerpiece of a federal prosecution that could dismantle corrupt systems across multiple jurisdictions. Your military background, perfect record, and the clear documentation of civil rights violations create a compelling narrative that will be difficult for defense attorneys to undermine. For the first time since her arrest, Maya allowed herself to experience the full emotional response that had been carefully compartmentalized during the crisis. A complex mixture of anger at the injustice she had experienced and vindication at seeing accountability finally applied to a system that had operated with impunity for decades. I never expected to fight battles on American soil after returning from Afghanistan, she observed, quietly rubbing her injured wrists. But I'm prepared to see this through whatever it takes. The fluorescent lights of County Memorial Hospital cast a harsh glow over Maya's face as Dr. Luisa Fernandez gently cleaned the abrasions on her wrists, the emergency room's privacy curtain offering minimal separation from the steady stream of Saturday night injuries and illnesses surrounding them. These should heal without scarring, if you keep them clean, and use the antibiotic ointment, the doctor explained, her experienced eyes noting Maya's perfect posture and controlled breathing despite obvious discomfort. I'm also concerned about the impact point on your temple, where you were pushed against the vehicle. The mild concussion symptoms you're experiencing should be monitored for the next 48 hours. Maya nodded her understanding, maintaining military precision in her responses despite the emotional and physical ordeal of the past 4 hours, her training providing structure amid chaos. Outside the curtain, her attorney Vivian Porter conducted a fierce whispered argument with hospital administration about documenting Maya's injuries properly for legal proceedings, her designer suit and take no prisoners demeanor, marking her as the formidable civil rights lawyer who had battled Riverdale PD in previous cases. My client is a decorated intelligence officer who was assaulted while in police custody. Porter's voice carried clearly despite her attempts at discretion. Every injury will be photographed, measured, and included in official medical records with physician commentary on causation. This is not negotiable. Porter, a 52-year-old black woman whose own father had been beaten by police during civil rights demonstrations in the 60s, had built her career on holding law enforcement accountable, her reputation striking fear into police. Department legal teams across the state. When medical documentation was complete, Porter escorted Maya to her hybrid BMW, the interior immaculately maintained, much like her case files. The FBI has your vehicle secured as evidence, she explained, launching into a comprehensive outline of Maya's rights and potential legal pathways. Criminal charges against the officers will proceed separately from your civil case. Based on preliminary evidence, we're looking at substantial civil rights violations, false imprisonment, excessive force, and potentially hate crime enhancements, given the explicitly racial comments documented in Officer Hawkins' Los body cam footage. Maya processed this information with the same analytical approach she applied to military intelligence briefings, asking pointed questions about timeline witness cooperation and potential defense strategies. They'll attack my character, she noted matter-of-factly, paint me as anti-police or suggest I provoked the encounter somehow. Porter nodded grimly. Standard playbook. That's why your military record is our strongest asset. 2 combat deployments, multiple commendations, and current reserve status make you the perfect plaintiff to challenge their narrative. The FBI involvement elevates everything, giving us access to evidence that might otherwise have mysteriously disappeared. As Porter's car turned onto Maple Street, Maya was surprised to see neighbors gathered outside her modest colonial home, not with protest signs or angry expressions as she had feared, but with concerned faces and supportive postures. Susan Jenkins, a retired high school teacher who had recorded the arrest from her front porch, approached the vehicle as it parked. "We've been worried sick about you, Maya," she explained, genuine distress in her voice. "That officer had no right to treat you that way. Several of us have video footage if you need it." Other neighbors nodded in agreement, some offering prepared meals, others expressing outrage at what they had witnessed. Maya realized that not everyone in the community supported the discriminatory practices that had targeted her, some genuinely shocked by the naked prejudice they had observed firsthand. Maya thanked them with the grace under pressure that characterized her professional life, accepting their support, while Porter collected contact information for potential witnesses. Inside her home, with its military precision organization and carefully selected furnishings reflecting her travels around the world, Maya finally allowed her professional facade to crack slightly, hands trembling as she poured herself a glass of water. The local news was already reporting on the FBI raid of Riverdale Police Station, though details remained limited to an ongoing federal investigation into alleged civil rights violations. By morning, national outlets had picked up the story initial headlines, highlighting decorated intelligence officer racially profiled and FBI sting operation exposes police corruption ring. Maya's military photo in crisp uniform contrasted sharply with the mugshot taken during her unlawful detention, creating powerful imagery that resonated with viewers across political spectrums. The visual narrative of a woman who had served her country with distinction being degraded by the very system she had sworn to protect generated widespread outrage. Social media discussions trending under hashtags like #service not respected and #Maplewood corruption. Mayor Patricia Holloway called an emergency press conference Sunday morning, her tailored pantsuit and carefully applied makeup failing to disguise the panic behind her practiced political smile. The city of Maplewood takes these allegations extremely seriously. She began reading from a prepared statement that avoided acknowledging systemic issues while promising a thorough investigation of what she repeatedly characterized as an isolated incident. When seasoned investigative reporter Carlos Vasquez from Channel 7 confronted her with evidence of mayor's office emails discussing neighborhood demographic maintenance, the press conference abruptly concluded, Mayor Holloway's press secretary physically blocking cameras as she was hustled away from the podium. Maya's phone rang constantly with interview requests from news outlets across the country, the sudden spotlight intensifying her discomfort with public attention. Alone in her home Sunday night, the cumulative stress triggered PTSD symptoms she hadn't experienced since returning from her last deployment. Hypervigilance, making sleep impossible, as every passing car seemed potentially threatening. Her injured wrists throbbing in time with her accelerated heartbeat, as flashbacks blended memories of hostile interrogations in Afghanistan with her treatment at Riverdale Police Station. Monday morning found her exhausted but resolute, as she contacted the Veterans Affairs Office requesting a referral to Dr. Aisha Williams, a specialist in racial trauma and veteran issues she had read about in a military publication. The therapist's compassionate approach provided Maya with practical coping strategies while validating the legitimate anger and betrayal she felt toward a system she had risked her life defending. "What you're experiencing is a normal response to abnormal treatment," Dr. Williams explained during their emergency telehealth session. "The particular betrayal trauma veterans of color face when mistreated by American institutions they've served is rarely acknowledged but extensively documented." Across town, the Maplewood Business Association held an emergency meeting in the community center basement, the atmosphere tense as members argued about their involvement in the profiling scheme. Some expressed genuine shock at learning about the coordinated harassment, others worried primarily about potential liability, while a vocal minority defended the practices as necessary for maintaining community standards. Richard Whitfield from Riverside Grocery found himself increasingly isolated as details of his role emerged, his store windows vandalized overnight despite Maya publicly discouraging any retaliatory actions during her brief statement to local media. The community fractured along lines of those demanding accountability and those defending what they called traditional values, revealing tensions that had simmered beneath Maplewood's polished surface for decades. Throughout this tumultuous period, Maya received unexpected support from military colleagues, including General Sandra Hayes, who had faced similar discrimination during her early career before breaking barriers as one of the first black women to achieve general officer rank. "This isn't just your fight," Maya Hayes counseled during a lengthy phone conversation. "What happened to you is happening to service members across the country when they return to communities they've sacrificed to protect." Hayes connected Maya with military advocacy groups, offering resources for recovery and potential platforms for systemic change if she chose to speak out more broadly. For the first time, Maya considered the possibility of transforming her traumatic experience into a catalyst for reform, her analytical mind already mapping potential approaches as she had been trained to do with complex military objectives. Meanwhile, the FBI investigation expanded exponentially, as Officer Rhodes' testimony led to search warrants for other officers' homes, revealing text message groups where information about minority residents was shared, harassment, coordinated, and success stories of driving unwanted residents from the neighborhood celebrated with racist memes and derogatory language. The evidence suggested similar operations in neighboring communities, creating a domino effect of investigations across the state as patterns of systematic discrimination emerged from digital evidence that participants had foolishly assumed would remain private. The headquarters of the Police Officers Benevolent Association occupied a fortress-like building 6 blocks from the county courthouse, its brick exterior recently enhanced with security cameras following protests over previous police misconduct cases. Inside the wood-paneled conference room union, President Michael Fitzgerald pounded the table for emphasis as he addressed assembled representatives, his florid face contrasting with his crisp uniform, adorned with commendation pins from his 27 years of service. "This witch hunt will not stand," he declared to murmurs of agreement. "We've retained Maxwell Bennett to represent all officers involved, and we're launching an immediate media campaign to counter this politically motivated attack on law enforcement." Bennett, a silver-haired attorney known for successfully defending officers accused of misconduct, nodded confidently from his position at the head of the table, his $1,000 suit and gold Rolex conveying the success of his specialized practice. "We've already developed our counter-narrative," Bennett explained, opening a polished leather portfolio. "Miss Daniels will be portrayed as an anti-police agitator who provoked the encounter. Military service doesn't exempt citizens from lawful police commands, and we'll emphasize that point repeatedly in our media strategy." While this resistance mobilized, Maya discovered anonymous threats appearing on her social media accounts, messages like, "Go back where you came from," and "Blue lives matter more than yours" proliferating, despite platform reporting systems. Her concerns escalated when she discovered her car vandalized in her driveway Tuesday morning, the same threatening phrase scratched deeply into the paint, the violation of her personal space triggering another wave of hypervigilance that Dr. Williams helped her manage through grounding techniques and safety planning. The division within Maplewood grew increasingly visible as counter-protesters organized a Back the Blue rally outside the partially operational police station, demonstrators carrying thin blue-line flags alongside occasional Confederate banners despite organizers' claims of non-racial motivations. Signs reading "Maplewood for Families" carried barely disguised racial undertones, speakers emphasizing community standards and traditional values that echoed the coded language discovered in the department's communications. Behind closed doors, Mayor Holloway met with police union representatives, desperate to develop strategy for containing the scandal without addressing root causes, her political survival instincts overriding any genuine interest in substantive reform. The FBI Threat Assessment Team assigned temporary security detail to Maya after analyzing the escalating rhetoric and specific threats directed at her. Agent Washington explained the pattern while reviewing security enhancements for her home. "Systems fight hardest when exposed. What you're experiencing is unfortunately predictable when corrupt institutions feel threatened." The pressure extended beyond direct threats as Maya received a certified letter from the Maplewood Homeowners Association citing obscure violations regarding her garden border height and unauthorized wind chimes, transparent attempts at harassment through bureaucratic means. Her mortgage lender simultaneously initiated a routine review of her loan despite her perfect payment history and excellent credit score. The timing too coincidental to be anything but coordinated pressure. Local journalist Danielle Crawford began investigating property records following tips from community members, uncovering a disturbing pattern where minority homebuyers faced escalating harassment until they sold homes at losses properties. Then purchased by connected developers, renovated minimally, and resold to white families at significant profits. This housing discrimination scheme had operated for decades, maintaining artificial demographic composition while generating substantial returns for insiders connected to city government and the police department. Maya faced an increasingly difficult decision as the city attempted damage control, offering a settlement with non-disclosure agreement that would prevent her from discussing the case publicly. Attorney Porter laid out the options during a strategy session in her downtown office. The settlement offers financial compensation without the stress of prolonged litigation, but includes silence about what happened to you. Going to trial exposes everything but subjects you to intense scrutiny, character attacks, and months, if not years, of legal proceedings. Maya sought counsel from others who had faced similar choices, including Professor James Mitchell, a black educator who had settled his police misconduct case 3 years earlier. "The settlement bought my peace but cost my voice," he confided during their coffee meeting. "I've questioned that decision every day since." Officer Hawkins, released on bail pending trial, gave an inflammatory interview to a sympathetic podcaster with police connections claiming persecution, while suggesting Maya's military record contained unreleased blemishes, a baseless insinuation designed to cast doubt on her character. His supporters established a legal defense fund through a police advocacy website, raising substantial amounts from those who viewed the federal investigation as government overreach. Some officers resigned rather than cooperate with the widening investigation. Others turned informant in exchange for reduced consequences, the department fracturing under external pressure and internal betrayals. Community activists mobilized support networks for Maya and others affected by the exposed discrimination patterns, including housing advocates, veterans groups, and civil rights organizations, coordinating efforts through weekly strategy meetings at First Baptist Church, whose pastor, Reverend Alvin Jackson, had long advocated for police accountability. They established systems to document other instances of profiling, creating a database that eventually contained hundreds of similar cases previously dismissed by internal affairs or buried by department leadership, revealing coordination between police businesses and government officials targeting specific neighborhoods for demographic maintenance. Maya received unexpected support when Officer Rhodes's complete testimony leaked to independent media, revealing the extent of corruption he had witnessed and his initial reluctance to participate, followed by growing moral discomfort. Rhodes faced death threats and family harassment for breaking the blue wall of silence, effectively sacrificing his law enforcement career for his testimony. Despite her own trauma, Maya reached out to Rhodes, recognizing his difficult position and moral courage, forming an unlikely alliance with the officer whose initial silence had enabled her mistreatment, but whose conscience ultimately prevailed. "You could have stayed silent like everyone else," she acknowledged during their carefully arranged meeting at the FBI field office. Coming forward took real courage. Rhodes shook his head, eyes downcast. "Not as much courage as it would have taken to intervene when it happened. I'm still processing my failure in that moment." Their conversation began a complex healing process for both Maya, finding unexpected closure through Rhodes' genuine remorse and commitment to systemic change. Are you still with me on this incredible journey toward justice? Comment number 1. If you believe whistleblowers like Officer Rhodes deserve protection when they expose corruption within their departments. Like this video if you think communities should come together to support victims of discrimination rather than closing ranks around corrupt institutions. Subscribe to hear more stories about brave individuals standing up against broken systems. The question now becomes, will Maya's testimony be enough to overcome decades of entrenched corruption? Can one woman's courage inspire an entire justice system to finally live up to its name? Let's find out as this powerful story continues. The William Jefferson Federal Courthouse imposed its neoclassical authority over the downtown plaza marble columns and broad steps, projecting the serious gravity of justice as Maya approached alongside Assistant U.S. Attorney Cameron Williams on a crisp autumn morning 10 weeks after her arrest. Security measures had been enhanced for the grand jury proceedings. Metal barricades, separating competing groups of demonstrators on opposite sides of the plaza. Tactical officers positioned discreetly but visibly around the perimeter. Williams, a methodical prosecutor with 15 years specializing in civil rights cases, had spent weeks preparing Maya for testimony, explaining the complexity of proving discriminatory intent rather than simply documenting misconduct. The challenge in these cases is demonstrating pattern and practice, not just individual bad actions, Williams had explained during their preparation sessions in the Justice Department's conference room, surrounded by bankers' boxes of evidence collected from the Riverdale Police Department. Your experience provides the human story that connects all these technical violations into a compelling narrative of deliberate discrimination. Maya had reviewed mountains of evidence alongside federal prosecutors, including recovered text messages between officers discussing her specifically before the encounter, new one on Maple Street. Military. Needs lesson about where she belongs. The discovery process had revealed dozens of similar communications, targeting other minority residents, creating the clear pattern necessary for federal prosecution. Maya entered the courthouse through a secure entrance, avoiding the media gauntlet at the main steps, her professional attire and military bearing projecting calm confidence, despite the internal anxiety that Dr. Williams had helped her acknowledge and manage through ongoing therapy sessions. Inside the wood-paneled grand jury room, with its imposing American flag and formal judicial trappings, she faced moments of doubt about challenging a system with decades of entrenchment, wondering if her testimony would truly make difference, or simply expose her to further retaliation without meaningful change. The grand jury comprised 23 diverse citizens from across the district, their attentive expressions suggesting genuine engagement with the serious constitutional issues before them. Maya's testimony began with clinical precision as she recounted the events of her arrest, maintaining the factual detachment that had characterized her military briefings. But as questioning continued, Assistant U.S. Attorney Williams skillfully guided her toward the emotional impact and broader implications. I followed all the rules society claims guarantee fair treatment, Maya explained in response to a juror's question about her experience. Advanced education, military service, home ownership, perfect credit, professional career, respectful interaction with officers. None of it mattered once Officer Hawkins decided I didn't belong in that neighborhood. Her articulate, measured testimony created a stark contrast to the defense narrative that had portrayed her as anti-police or provocative, her description of continuing hypervigilance and psychological impact resonating with jurors who understood the profound violation of being criminalized for simply existing in one's own community. Defense attorney Maxwell Bennett conducted aggressive cross-examination, suggesting Maya had provoked officers, exaggerated her treatment, or pursued publicity and financial gain. Maya remained composed, consistently redirecting to documented evidence rather than engaging with emotional bait. When Bennett questioned her patriotism with thinly veiled racial undertones, Maya calmly recounted her military commendations and intelligence operations that had directly saved American lives in Afghanistan, creating powerful contrast with officers who had mocked and disrespected her service while violating the very Constitution they had sworn to uphold. Officer Rhodes testified next, visibly nervous in his civilian clothes, his former uniform replaced by a modest suit purchased specifically for court appearances. He detailed the unofficial training received from veteran officers about maintaining neighborhood quality, explaining code systems used to target minorities without explicit racial language methods for justifying stops and searches, and the plows in the sea, subtle pressures to participate through silence. We were taught to use terms like suspicious behavior and community standards violation rather than anything explicitly racial, Rhodes explained, hands clasped tightly to control their trembling. But everyone understood exactly who we were supposed to target and why. Rhodes admitted his initial participation through silence, describing his growing discomfort and eventual decision to document the misconduct, secretly presenting recordings where senior officers openly discussed demographic management, while careful to avoid directly incriminating language. Technical testimony followed from FBI cyber specialists who had reconstructed deleted communications and documented patterns in enforcement actions showing statistical impossibility of random distribution. Analyst presentations demonstrated how minority drivers were stopped at 7 times the rate of white drivers in identical vehicles, how suspicious person reports clustered exclusively around minority homeowners, and how code words in police communications directly preceded enforcement actions against specific demographic groups. Forensic accountants traced financial connections between police leaders, business association members, and real estate developers, revealing economic motivation behind discrimination through maintaining property values via demographic control. Captain Monroe appeared under subpoena on the 3rd day of testimony, initially invoking his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, as his attorney had advised. However, when presented with overwhelming evidence and offered cooperation agreement reducing potential sentences, Monroe broke under the pressure of potential decades in federal prison. He confirmed department policies targeting minorities moving into certain neighborhoods, revealing weekly meetings with business association members and select city officials where neighborhood integrity was discussed, using carefully coded language designed to maintain plausible deniability. "We never put the real directives in writing," Monroe admitted, his previously commanding presence diminished by orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. "Everything was verbal, using terms like quality of life enforcement, and proactive community maintenance, while everyone understood the actual targets and purposes." Maya observed from the witness area, as the system that had oppressed her was methodically dissected through testimony evidence and data analysis that transformed individual incidents into undeniable pattern. The final witness, 84-year-old community historian Dr. Eleanor Thornton, presented redlining maps from the 1952nd alongside current enforcement data, demonstrating disturbing continuity of discrimination despite changing methods and terminology. The tactics evolved from explicit segregation to coded enforcement. Dr. Thornton explained her academic precision, adding historical gravitas to contemporary evidence. But the purpose remained identical, controlling who could live where, through systematic intimidation rather than outright prohibition. As testimony concluded, Maya felt an unexpected sense of validation watching jurors' expressions shift from initial skepticism to growing recognition of the reality many minority citizens experienced daily. The weight of evidence transformed her individual trauma into powerful testament against systemic injustice. Her military discipline and intelligence training, finding purpose in this unexpected battlefield for constitutional rights, equal protection under law. The morning fog had barely lifted when coordinated raids executed federal arrest warrants across Maplewood tactical teams in FBI windbreakers, simultaneously appearing at homes of indicted officers, city officials, and business owners. As news, helicopters captured the dramatic operation from above. The grand jury had returned multiple indictments against 17 individuals, including Captain Monroe Officer Hawkins Mayer Holloway and grocery store manager Richard Whitfield, charges ranging from civil rights violations under color of law to conspiracy, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. The pre-dawn arrest at Mayor Holloway's Georgian-style mansion created particularly striking footage. The elegantly dressed politician escorted to an unmarked vehicle in handcuffs, while her husband shouted questions about contacting their attorney. Police Union President Michael Fitzgerald hastily organized press conference on courthouse steps, red-faced, as he denounced political persecution of public servants, while surrounded by supporters holding thin blue-line flags. His prepared statement interrupted by counter-protesters carrying enlarged photos of discrimination victims, including Maya's military portrait juxtaposed with her arrest injuries. Officer Hawkins, tipped off about the impending arrests by sympathetic dispatcher, temporarily evaded capture, disappearing from his apartment before tactical team arrival, triggering multi-state alert for his apprehension. Agent Washington personally contacted Maya with warning about potential threat, as Hawkins had made specific threats regarding her during recorded jail phone calls after his initial arrest and release on bail. "We have no specific information suggesting he's headed your way," Washington explained during their secure call, "but given his statements and training, we're implementing precautionary measures." Maya reluctantly relocated temporarily to secure military housing, arranged through her commanding officer, the forced displacement triggering complex emotions about again being driven from her home by the same institutional racism she had faced throughout the ordeal. "It feels like they're still controlling my movements," she confided to Dr. Williams during their emergency therapy session. "Even with indictments, I'm the one who has to leave my home." Hawkins' disappearance further polarized the already divided community. Supporters claiming persecution had driven away dedicated officer, while others pointed to flight as evidence of guilt, the manhunt dominating local news cycles and social media discussions. Maya found temporary refuge at Fort Harrison, where she served reserve duty, the familiar military environment providing structured comfort among colleagues who understood chain of command and respected her intelligence service. Colonel James Richardson, her direct supervisor in the Intelligence Division, arranged enhanced security protocols while modifying her duties to accommodate ongoing legal proceedings without derailing her career progression. "The Army stands behind you," Lieutenant Colonel Daniels Richardson assured her during their private meeting in his office, overlooking the parade grounds. "Your experience highlights issues many service members face, and your handling of this situation demonstrates exactly the kind of leadership and integrity we value." Fellow intelligence officers created protective circle around Maya, demonstrating different kind of blue wall than the police version 1, based on legitimate service rather than corruption and secrecy. Major Teresa Gonzalez, who had served alongside Maya in Afghanistan, organized support rotation, ensuring she was never alone when traveling between secure locations. "This isn't just about you anymore," Gonzalez explained as they reviewed security protocols. "You've become symbol for every service member who faced discrimination after risking their lives overseas." Meanwhile, community activists, led by Reverend Jackson, organized town hall meetings addressing systemic racism in law enforcement, extending invitations to Maya as featured speaker. She initially declined, uncomfortable with public spotlight and concerned about potentially prejudicing ongoing legal proceedings, but reconsidered after meeting other victims without platform or public voice to share similar experiences. At her first public appearance, held in Community College Auditorium under security precautions, Maya surprised organizers by speaking not about personal grievance, but structural failures requiring systematic correction. "This isn't about individual officers or single incidents," she explained to capacity crowd of community members, activists, and media representatives. "This is about systems designed to perpetuate inequality while maintaining thin veneer of neutrality. My military service didn't protect me, because these systems aren't failures working incorrectly. They're working exactly as designed, identifying and targeting those deemed outsiders, regardless of their contributions or character." Her speech unexpectedly went viral across social media platforms. Phrases like, "I served a country that didn't serve me," becoming rallying cries in broader discussions about institutional racism and veterans' treatment. The intersection of military service and racial discrimination, creating powerful narrative that transcended traditional political divisions. After 11 days evasion, Hawkins was located at rural militia compound, 2 states away. Negotiation team deploying after confidential tip from compound member concerned about increasing instability of their unexpected guest. Standoff developed with supporters claiming political persecution, while FBI negotiators maintained communication local tactical units, establishing perimeter without direct engagement to prevent escalation. After tense, 27 hours negotiated, surrender achieved without violence. Though Hawkins emerged with dramatic sheriff's deputy escort, attempting to portray solidarity from local law enforcement that courthouse records later revealed had been negotiated as face-saving measure rather than genuine support. Hawkins' booking photos circulated widely, showing stark transformation from his previous arrogant demeanor in department photos, now appearing disheveled and desperate in orange jumpsuit facing federal charges, carrying potential 20 year sentence. Pre-trial motions began with defense team attempting to suppress evidence, challenge jurisdiction, and dismiss charges on procedural technicalities, standard tactics in law enforcement misconduct cases that historically succeeded in preventing accountability. Judge Elaine Michaels, presiding over consolidated cases against all defendants, systematically rejected motions in detailed written opinions, establishing clear precedent for similar cases nationwide. The evidence demonstrates pattern of deliberate rights violations under color of law, Judge Michaels wrote, in key decision denying motion to dismiss. The constitutional protections afforded all citizens cannot be selectively applied based on demographic characteristics, regardless of how carefully such selection is disguised in neutral language. United States Attorney announced unprecedented settlement agreement with City of Maplewood, requiring complete police department, restructuring Independent Oversight Commission with Substantive Enforcement Authority Compensation Fund for Fenty. Discrimination victims, mandatory training programs for all city employees, and statistical monitoring of enforcement patterns with regular public reporting requirements. The comprehensive agreement became national model for addressing systematic discrimination in law enforcement, cited by civil rights organizations in similar negotiations across the country. Maya faced Officer Hawkins directly during preliminary hearing in federal courthouse, their first encounter since her arrest. Momentary eye contact revealing his diminished status and her reclaimed power in equal measure. The confrontation contained neither joy nor revenge satisfaction for Maya, but complex resolution justice system temporarily functioning as intended despite powerful resistance. As proceedings continued through preliminary motions, Maya recognized true justice remained incomplete, but undeniable progress had been achieved, creating foundation for systemic changes beyond individual accountability. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows of the repurposed building that had once housed Riverdale Police Station, now transformed into Maplewood Community Justice Center following department restructuring the brick exterior power. Washed and renovated, intimidating security features replaced with welcoming design elements, including community garden and public art installation created by local high school students. Exactly 1 year after her arrest, Maya stood at podium in main auditorium that had previously served as police bullpen, now hosting police oversight committee meetings, community services, offices, and civil rights legal clinic offering free representation to victims of discrimination. As newly appointed civilian oversight chairperson role, she had initially resisted, but accepted as necessary service. Maya addressed diverse gathering of community members, reformed police officers, city officials, and media representatives, assembled for center's official opening. This building once represented fear for many in our community. She began her measured voice carrying authority developed through military command experience. Today, it stands as testament to what becomes possible when we confront uncomfortable truths and commit to genuine transformation rather than superficial reforms. This journey began with injustice, but continues towards something better, though we must remain vigilant against backsliding into comfortable patterns that served some while oppressing others. Maplewood demographics had begun gradual shift, as discriminatory practices diminished property values, remaining stable. Despite fearmongers' predictions of decline, demonstrating economic arguments for exclusion had always been pretexts for racial prejudice rather than financial necessities. Maya's own neighborhood now included several minority families who purchased homes without systematic harassment community, slowly healing through honest conversations, accountability measures, and recognition of shared interests, transcending artificial divisions. The monthly neighborhood association meetings, once vehicles for coordinating unofficial harassment campaigns, now focused on actual community improvement projects, including scholarship fund for local students and emergency assistance, program for residents facing financial hardships. Former Officer Rhodes, who had completed police science degree during extended paid leave, now worked with National Reform Organization developing training programs addressing implicit bias, procedural justice, and ethical intervention when ATC. Witnessing misconduct. He regularly visited police academies, sharing cautionary tale of department's downfall. His personal journey from passive enabler to active reformer serving as powerful example for cadets entering law enforcement during period of national reckoning around policing practices. Though some officers still considered him traitor for breaking blue wall of silence, growing number recognized necessity of evolution if profession hoped to rebuild community trust and legitimacy. I lost my first career, but found my actual calling. Rhodes explained during panel discussion at Justice Center featuring former officers who had become accountability advocates. The badge means nothing if we abandon the oath to protect constitutional rights of everyone, not just those who look like us or live in certain neighborhoods. Maya established veteran advocacy program specializing in minority service members transitioning to civilian life navigating systems designed with inherent biases against them despite their service and sacrifice. Program included housing assistance, legal support, and mental health services, addressing unique challenges at intersection of veteran status and racial identity. Military headquarters recognized program with commendation, implementing many recommendations nationwide, after internal review revealed similar experiences among minority service members across branches. The uniform should protect, but often doesn't. Maya explained during program orientation for recently discharged veterans. We're building support systems recognizing that reality while working to change it, providing practical assistance today while pursuing structural changes for tomorrow. Officer Hawkins served prison sentence in federal correctional institution after conviction on multiple charges including civil rights violations, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. Several officers received reduced sentences for cooperation with federal investigation. Others awaited trial as evidence continued emerging from extensive digital records seized during initial raid. Captain Monroe's comprehensive testimony had implicated officials across state, resulting in ongoing investigations into similar practices in neighboring jurisdictions. Federal task force expanding based on patterns identified through Maplewood case. Mayor Holloway lost recall election, initiated by community activists, subsequently faced federal corruption charges related to development contracts connected to discriminatory housing schemes, her reputation destroyed by exposed emails, revealing explicit racial animus behind seemingly neutral policy decisions. Federal Bureau of Investigation established specialized civil rights unit using Maplewood case as training model. Agent Washington promoted to supervisory position, leading initiative implementing methodology nationwide, demonstrating effective intervention strategies for addressing systematic discrimination within law enforcement agencies. Technical monitoring systems developed during investigation became implemented in departments with established pattern of violations, creating early warning system for potential abuses before they expanded into entrenched practices. Resistant to reform. Maya occasionally experienced PTSD symptoms stemming from her arrest and subsequent threats, continuing therapy with Dr. Williams while leading support group for discrimination survivors, converting personal trauma into community healing through shared experience and practical coping strategies. Her military career advanced with promotion to lieutenant colonel security clearance, restored and expanded after temporary administrative hold during investigation. Superior officers recognizing her handling of crisis demonstrated exactly the leadership qualities valued in intelligence operations. Your ability to maintain operational security and mission focus under extreme personal duress speaks volumes about your character, General Hayes noted during promotion ceremony. The same qualities that made you exceptional intelligence officer make you powerful advocate for necessary changes within institutions you've served faithfully despite their failures toward you. Fellow officers demonstrated newfound awareness of challenges minority members faced within military hierarchy institutional changes, slowly addressing systemic barriers through policy revisions, enhanced reporting mechanisms, and leadership. Accountability measures for maintaining inclusive command environments. Community commemoration ceremony, held on anniversary of FBI intervention, brought together diverse residents, reformed police officers, federal agents, and community organizers in public park that had witnessed Maya's initial unlawful arrest. The location deliberately chosen to symbolize reclaiming public spaces for all citizens, regardless of demographic characteristics. Speakers acknowledged painful history, while celebrating measurable progress, remaining vigilant against complacency or regression as national attention shifted to newer controversies. Maya's keynote address emphasized personal responsibility within broken systems. Change happens when good people refuse to participate in injustice regardless of personal cost. Institutions don't transform themselves. They respond to persistent pressure from individuals willing to risk comfort and security for principles greater than self-interest. This journey continues long after cameras move elsewhere, requiring sustained commitment rather than momentary outrage. Several months later, Maya visited Maplewood Elementary School Career Day, in military uniform students of all backgrounds, seeing possibility of service, belonging, and dignity through her presence and story. Young black girl approached shyly after presentation, asking about difficulties Maya had faced and whether she should still pursue her dream of military service despite discouragement from those who claimed certain paths weren't for people like her. Instead of sanitized, answer, adults often provide children. Maya offered age-appropriate truth. Sometimes people judge unfairly, based on how you look rather than who you are or what you can contribute. Our job isn't just proving them wrong about us individually, but creating a better world where such judgments happen less frequently for those coming after us. Girl's mother approached Maya afterward, tears glistening, as she thanked her for honest representation her daughter desperately needed during formative years when career aspirations begin taking shape. She's never seen someone like herself in uniform being respected, and heard the mother explained quietly. You've given her permission to dream beyond limitations others try placing on her. As twilight settled over Maplewood one evening, Maya walked through her neighborhood feeling genuine belonging for first time since purchasing her home. The evening stroll, once source of anxiety, now peaceful routine, allowing reflection on journey from victim to catalyst for change. She exchanged greetings with neighbors of various backgrounds, tending gardens or supervising children's play, noted police patrol car whose officer waved respectfully, recognizing her as oversight chairperson rather than suspicious. Presence requiring scrutiny or intimidation. The transformation remained incomplete but undeniably progressing. Justice system slowly bending toward actual justice through continued vigilance, accountability mechanisms, and collective refusal to accept discrimination as inevitable. 2. Feature of American life. Maya's porch light illuminated her front steps as she returned home. Symbolic beacon representing safety, she had helped create not just for herself but entire community, previously divided by artificial boundaries and calculated fears. The system designed to intimidate her into leaving had instead catalyzed her deeper commitment to reforming institutions from within her military oath to defend Constitution against all enemies, finding unexpected application on American soil where principles and practices often diverged until forced into alignment through sustained pressure and undeniable evidence. What do you think about Maya's journey from victim to community leader? Let me know in the comments if you believe one person can truly make a difference against systemic discrimination. If this story of justice and transformation inspired you, please hit that like button to help others find it too. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories about everyday heroes fighting for equality and accountability. Share this video with someone who needs reminder that change is possible even against powerful systems that seem immovable. Thank you for witnessing Maya's journey with me today. And remember, true patriotism sometimes means holding America accountable to its highest ideals rather than accepting its deepest failures. Maya Daniels' journey teaches us that systemic change often begins with a single act of injustice against someone with the courage to fight back. Her story demonstrates how institutions designed to protect can instead become vehicles for discrimination when accountability disappears. The transformation of Riverdale Police Department reveals that justice requires more than individual punishments. It demands structural reform, civilian oversight, and continuous vigilance. We learn that documentation and evidence are powerful weapons against systems designed to operate in shadows, and that technology can either enable oppression or expose it. The bravery of Officer Rhodes reminds us that true integrity means speaking truth regardless of personal cost, while Maya's resilience shows that trauma can become fuel for meaningful advocacy. Her military background highlights the painful contradiction faced by those who serve a country that doesn't always serve them in return. Perhaps most importantly, this case demonstrates that community solidarity across demographic lines is essential for sustainable change. The successful transformation of Maplewood teaches us that confronting uncomfortable truths about discrimination isn't just morally necessary. It creates stronger, more vibrant communities where artificial boundaries give way to genuine connection. Justice isn't a destination but an ongoing journey requiring commitment long after headlines fade and public attention shifts elsewhere. What systems in your community might need similar transformation? Have you witnessed discrimination that went unchallenged because it was wrapped in official authority? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If Maya's courage in standing up against injustice inspired you, please hit that like button to help this important story reach more viewers. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives about everyday heroes fighting for equality and accountability in America. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that change is possible even against powerful institutions that seem untouchable. Thank you for witnessing Maya's journey with us today. Remember, true patriotism sometimes means holding America accountable to its highest ideals rather than accepting its deepest failures. Together, we can create communities where everyone belongs regardless of their background.